Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
And as a real treat, we've got Dom for the full pod. Hi, Dom.
Hey there.
I'm going to start with a question for Paul. Paul, how do you feel about the fact that we're going up?
Yeah.
That would be still quite remarkable, I think. But yeah, we seem to have a settled team, and we seem to have a lot of round pegs in round holes, and we're winning games.
And yet you still somehow sound disappointed by it.
No, it's just amazing, isn't it? The thing is, it's what sort of we talk about a lot. It's just getting a team where everyone knows what they're doing, and that seems to be what we're doing at the moment. Robbins has wanted to play this system since he basically joined the club, and he hasn't had the players up until probably this January transfer window when it all stars aligned. To some extent, he was helped by the sale of JCH because it meant that he didn't sort of utilise him, and he's had to give Bakayoko a run of games. And whatever we think of his technical ability, I think we all agree that we're a better team with him in it. The injury to Chaplin means we don't go through that escapade every week. And Bright settled into that system, and we'll talk about Fleetwood. When Bright wasn't there, the system still worked because he had other players who could play it competently. It's working, isn't it? We have a system, we have a style of play, and it works. And that's all you ever ask for out of every manager is, I don't care what the style of football you're playing, as long as what you're trying to do achieves what you're trying to do, then it works. The fact that what Robbins is trying to do also equates to good football is actually making it more pleasurable. But it was the same under AD Buffoy. When he got it right at the start, you weren't quibbling about the long ball. You're actually saying, okay, we're winning games here. Yeah. It's as long as you're winning, it doesn't matter how, but the fact we're winning the way we are, playing the style of football, does make it a lot easier.
Yeah. Moments of the week then. So, Neil, do you want to start us off?
My moment of the week was missing an entire game of football because I was sat on a motorway. I did a Liam Kelly, and I missed that match because I tried really hard to get home from Milton Keynes for that match. I left early and I just ended up sitting on the motorway for about 3 hours and then got home about 9:30 just as the match was finishing. So, and yet I was still very happy because once I saw the result and I got to kind of follow it on the way home, it was still nerve-wracking because of how things are going. So I don't know if I could quite sacrifice seeing any more games this season and basically sit on the motorway if it meant we'd win every game, but I'd be tempted. That's how much I want to go up.
I think, well, it's done now anyway, so we don't have to worry about it. Dom, moment of the week.
Lee Burge assist. It's sort of something I've been waiting for, like, ever since he's come into the team. Just something I really, really wanted to see. Like, I didn't want him to leave the club without seeing him register an assist from just kicking the ball really long. And now I've seen that, and my life's kind of complete.
Did he get 2 assists across the 2 games?
I
think he might have racked up a couple.
He got like a vague assist, didn't he? It was kind of involved, yeah.
The Fleetwood goal is very much down to his kick.
And all those people criticising that kick. Yeah. Paul, your moment of the week?
Bakayoko going through one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And then, thankfully, on Saturday, going through one-on-one with the keeper and actually scoring. But his first one, the one against Fleetwood, is one of the funniest things I've seen on a football pitch in a long time.
Now, Darius Henderson does something similar and is absolutely rightfully crucified, even to this day. Is Bakayoko unlucky? Does it get caught in the ground, or does it get caught in the... Yeah. Or is it... Because I've watched it over and over again trying to work it out. But it does not seem like the sort of thing that would happen to him either way.
I think he's unlucky the first... To happen twice in the same move is just... He just looks hysterically bad. And it's one of those things where you either get angry at him for the fact it looks like he never played football before, or you find it absolutely hilarious. Luckily, I found the latter. I just thought it was just funny. That is just funny. It just is.
So you touched on it already, and I think we should probably, without wanting to be too introspective, I think we should probably talk about it in reference to the two games. Is last week we sort of said, does it matter if Enabakari slows the play down if he keeps scoring goals? And we said, does it matter that Bakayoko isn't like empirically a good footballer if he keeps adding to what we do? And that this week it was proved above anything else that it couldn't mean a fucking jot less, could it? These things are ephemeral when it comes to actually they're both contributing so heavily in their own very, very strange ways. And it's what you said up top, isn't it? Is that weirdly you'd rather have like an inferior round peg in a round hole than an amazing square one in a round hole. And I think they both count for that. But the love that I'd already got for Bakayoko, despite not being very good, it's amplified so much in recent weeks. My moment of the week, it was really should have come up sooner than this. That goal against Fleetwood could only be scored by one man in football at the moment. One man in football. Who else could score that goal?
That is his move, isn't it? I mean,
that is his move.
Since that went in, is what's it? You're right. It was really noticeable on Saturday. But anything that he had the opportunity to, he was just legging it towards. Like he was like, I found a new way to score goals.
But also, if you go back to the Luton game, that's how he won that. That's how he should have won that penalty.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good call. And
this is the thing about Bakayoko. While he's a completely odd footballer, one thing you can't sort of fault is that work rate and that desire. Yeah. And he does do that. He does close down goalkeepers. And I said it's like the Fleetwood one, you watch where he's run from. He's earned that goal just by the fact he's put that much effort into trying to close that ball down. But as I said, that isn't unique. He did it against Luton and really should have won a penalty. And that's what he adds to the team. That's why I think we're a better team with him in it, because he does do that. He just wants to be forward. He wants to be as far forward at the pitch as possible, and that really has helped the team. And we're just a better team with him in it. Whether or not, I suppose the biggest question is why has it taken so long for us to be given this opportunity? Because he scored those 2 goals against Charlton, and then we barely saw him again for a couple of months. And it's just he's had a bit of an odd, truncated season, hasn't he? But now you are questioning sort of why we took so long for him to get anywhere near the team.
It's never a quick fix, is it? It's not like, because obviously when we brought all of these players in, jotting them in the team and just sort of saying, right, be the team that we want you to be, doesn't really happen, does it? I mean, I think what's helped is the familiarity of kind of all of the players and kind of they're all kind of finding their own feet within the team, and it just feels like it wasn't going to happen right away. And the problem he has, I think, more than anybody else, and you kind of touched on this earlier, is that because he wasn't playing particularly well, and when he then came on subsequently, he wasn't playing very well. And we had other options. It would be very hard to kind of keep him in the team at that point. Now we've got this sort of situation where we don't really have any options anyway, other than to sort of persist with this front three, and we've managed to do that, and it's kind of gone in our favour. But I think you mentioned earlier about sort of Chaplin not being around or not being injured. Has very much helped us in the sense where we've been forced, right? You three will play together, and you three will get familiar because we don't have any other option.
But I also think that the other things with Bakayoko, one is he does just sort of operate almost exclusively around the box, which is what I think we've been desperate for all season, and what we've whinged about with Chaplin, even if you take his talent out of it, is that we were saying you really just need somebody to hang around the box and take their chances when they come up, which was what he did against that Peterborough goal, which actually I think deserves a great deal of credit for all of the kind of the sort of impulse and quality of that finish and everything. And I think that Huula's got a lot better because Huula's finding space to get into this defenders are occupied with the massive, gangly, unorthodox Bakayoko right through the middle. I know this sounds like a big self-congratulatory backslap, but we've been saying all season, put players in their right positions with an idea of how the team fits together, and things should get better. And it's not. I don't think it's a surprise to us that actually, when you look at the team now, you go, yeah, there is a function to all of you here, and it looks like a slick machine now, doesn't it? Even with players in that we don't think are the best in the world.
Yeah, and that's kind of it, isn't it? It's kind of, there is always more to it than just, okay, you're a good player, you're a good player, you're a good player, throw them all in and expect it to be good. Because we all sit and look at lineups beforehand and whinge about, this player we think's good isn't in the team. But there just is so much more to it, and we're starting to see that now. And I don't want to become too sort of definitive about it, because I still don't think anything could go wrong.
Yeah, they could easily go on a 5-game losing streak, I expect, and then we go back to saying that we know fuck all. But it's looking very good at the moment.
Paul, and that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, Paul, you're going to start us off with a bit of a Fleetwood rundown then. I mean, where do you even begin with that game?
I mean, I think you start with the fact that we're talking about players playing well. I think the big thing out of the last 2 games is the system works, and we've got the players to fit into the system. So against Fleetwood, Bright was obviously suspended after his sending off. We had a centre-back partnership of basically a debutant and Tom Davis. And obviously with Liam Kelly missing, we had Mailer coming in. So it's not even like that was our starting 11. That was quite, it was 4 changes from what we would class as our starting 11 with Shipley coming in. And you start with the fact that in the first 10 minutes, it was 9 minutes of Fleetwood absolutely battering us, and we scored the goal. That's basically how the first 10 minutes went. It was very strange to witness because Fleetwood were all over us. We just couldn't clear our lines. And then, Sterling pointed down the right wing for Burge to kick. Burge punted it into the top right-hand corner. Their player did the back pass. As we said, Bakayoko closed down the goalkeeper, and then that was it, 1-0. And Fleetwood then went back to doing what they'd done for the first 5 minutes. They absolutely battered us again. And you were just wondering how we were going to cope. And Tom Davis and Morgan Williams just did what they needed to do. I mean, I don't think Tom Davis had his best game for us. I think you could see he was very rusty, but he put his body on the line. I think he improved as the game went on. And Morgan alongside him looks like a technically good footballer. He can definitely pass. He showed a bit of composure, but also it's very difficult against Ched Evans, and he held his own, and that was a major part of it. We didn't. The major part of that game was the fact that Fleetwood were on top for large periods, especially the first half. They got it back to 1-1, but we didn't crumble. We didn't cave in. At no point did the heads drop, and that's massive credit to that team because it was a patched up team. Obviously, Mailer didn't know he was going to be playing until quite late on. And I know he's got a lot of experience, but you can see the guy's not fit. I mean, the guy's definitely struggling for fitness as the games go on. And he looked a bit lost at times. But we didn't panic. We didn't do stupid things. We didn't allow Fleetwood's dominance of the first half to really get on top of us or to diminish us. And then I think Hawula basically admitted that he'd had a crap game up to that point. Got the ball and just thought, well, next time I get it, I'm just going to do something. Skinned 3 players and put one in the top corner. And you're like, well, that's what sometimes happens when you've got that sort of player who can skin people. Sometimes they might pull that goal out of their ass. But the reason we were in the game up to that point was the hard work of the players around him. People like, again, Bayliss probably didn't have his best game, but worked extremely hard. Shipley works extremely hard. There's just the right attitude.
I just want to go back to Williams for a second. I thought you mentioned his passing before. I thought his passing really stood out. Don, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, what I was impressed by myself was he made like 3 or 4 just really well-timed tackles, which, just to have the confidence to, as a defender, just to step in and put a few challenges in like that can be quite bold. Obviously, yeah, if you step forward, there's always a risk that you're going to get beaten to it and it's going to leave space in behind. But yeah, I think there was a reasonable amount of self-belief to his performance. I'm not sure he's someone I'd want to see too much of right now, but it's good to know that he's there.
Paul, pick it up from there then.
Oh, I mean, the second half was a bit more even and probably a little less entertaining. In just we probably had a couple more chances in the second half. We reverted in the first half. We played more of a 4-1, sort of 2-3, and then the second half we reverted back to our 4-2-3-1 with Hawula going behind Bakayoko, which Hawula sort of drifts in and out of the game anyway. I don't think that's probably the position you'd want him to be most of the time, but the game was more even when we were in the shape that we prefer. We were more involved, but it's really hard. The second half was more, I suppose, it showed where we are as a team at the moment, where we just played it out. Fleetwood had their chances, and the much maligned Burge made some fantastic saves, and that's what I think he's going to be critical in this running, because he is a good goalkeeper. He is very critical to the way that we've picked up points over the last 18 months. Yeah, he's had a bit of a wobble recently. I don't think anyone's saying he hasn't, but the thing is, you want your goalkeeper to be in top form. And I think in the first half, did Bakayoko play like a 60-yard back pass to him that was a bit ropey at one point?
Oh, yeah.
From what I remember, that could have gone anywhere. But other than that, people were using him more intelligent. The other thing you noticed in that game is we always build from the back. On that Tuesday night against Fleetwood, Burge kicked it longer than he has done for the majority of the season. He very rarely went short. And when you've got Tom Davies in front of you, I sort of agree with that. I mean, and this isn't, my personal feelings on Tom Davies, he's not particularly the world's best footballer, but I think we didn't want to be putting that added pressure on him in that game. I don't think it would have benefited anyone, especially with the youngster alongside him. But second half, where you want someone to just put their head in the way of the ball, that's where Davis came to the fore, and we basically stopped Fleetwood from getting chances in our box. And as we all know, the best thing you want from an opposing team when they're chasing a goal is for them to have 25, 30 yarders, and that's what we reduced Fleetwood to. Fleetwood started hitting them from 25, 30 yards. Yeah, one of them might fly into the top corner, but 99 times out of 100, they're not going to go in. And we basically professionally saw that out. And having had some of the results, we've had recently, our last home game not being the best against Burton, Fleetwood are a difficult side. They are just below it. They were just below us in the table. They're a team that can cause you trouble. I thought while they probably edged it, it wasn't our best performance recently. The fact that we're in the right attitude, and I think this is a big one for us at the moment, is there is a momentum about us. There is definitely an assurance about us at the moment. We look like a team who've got things under control, which is not something you could have said in January or February when we were panic stations most games. Things are starting to click. And as you said earlier about getting promoted, at the moment, out of the teams who are fighting for sixth place, we're clearly the most in form. And you can say that the January transfer window was a success. We got the right players in. And one of my concerns was injuries. Well, we went into that game, as I said, with 4 of our first teamers out, and you didn't really notice. And that's a lot of credit to those 4 players.
Neil, any thoughts on Fleetwood from your car-shaped vantage point?
No, I just think it was vital that we got that. So we kind of turned the Peterborough game into a proper sort of 6-point playoff, 6-pointer. No, nothing more to add.
And Dom, you were very much at that 6-pointer. The players and Robbins spoke really sort of effusively about the quality from the stands. Do you think you drove a large part of that, or was that a team effort?
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to hand over some of the credit to the players for the result, but it was a very nice atmosphere to be at. It just felt like everyone wanted to be there. Everyone was pretty optimistic. I mean, funny enough, there was a guy behind me who I think he must have he was on his stag do actually, and he was dressed in a full Aston Villa kit, and there wasn't even much aggro about that, which was sort of just summed up sort of the pleasant mood around the place.
A flavour of the sort of laughs we have around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about the game itself?
Yeah, I suppose the most notable thing, and probably something which will have to be factored into the analysis of the game, was it was really bloody windy, and the wind was sort of blown generally towards the direction of the away stand, which meant in the first half we were kicking straight into the wind, which sort of really helped Peterborough's pressing game, because we were forced to play out from the back, and that meant that Peterborough could push off and try and force errors. And the first sort of 10-15 minutes of the game, Peterborough had shown up with a really high tempo, and we could barely get out of our own half there. And the standout player of that first half was Marcus Maddison, who's just clearly too good for this level. He was playing sort of a free role, so he was sort of going down either wing. It was very hard to sort of pin him down, try and set someone on him to stop him. And he lies that with just very good delivery, which means that Peterborough's two strikers were having sort of a 5-yard advantage over our defenders, because he could spring them in a lot quicker than sort of a normal League One player could do. And there was one very big chance which their number 9 Matt Godden had, where he received a cross from Maddison, had time and space sort of take it down and turn it, and it was a very good save from Lee Burge to deny him. Another key moment in the first half, sort of the first 5 minutes, was during a corner. Liam Kelly handled the ball, basically, sort of trying to turn and clear it. Was sort of innocuous enough that the referee didn't spot it, but if he had, that would have been a penalty, and that would have changed the course of the game. And we were really struggling to get a foothold into the game, basically right up until Luke Thomas sort of played that pass to Bakayoko, slid him through, and it was 1-0. And it was completely against the run of play, really. But also from that point onwards, sort of knowing what a good Mark Robbins team is like away from home, and then also sort of knowing what sort of situation people are in at the moment, where they're just in wretched form, that kind of felt like the game was, if not won, had certainly tipped massively in our favour from that point. And then that sort of played out in the second half, where we were a lot better, we were a lot more composed, we were able to play through midfield. Bakayoko was excellent, he was closing down defenders, he was challenging very well. Heruda was getting in behind. I suppose that might have been partially because of the way Peterborough were set up, sort of playing a back three, and they switched back to a back four in the second half, and sort of that confusion opened up some space down that left flank for Heruda to exploit. He was getting in a lot of very dangerous positions, and it was sort of summed up really that Peterborough made 2 professional fouls, and in both instances probably there was enough cover that you wouldn't say they're the last man. The first instance was when Luke Thomas had poked it past their goalkeeper, had come massively off his line and just came in 2-footed. That's the one which I think is more of a red card. I can understand why the referee didn't give it, but it sort of summed up the recklessness, the panic that had set into Peterborough. The second one, it was Luke Thomas again. He burst through and he was just clipped by their right back or centre back, sort of who switched between those 2 positions when he was clean through. And that led to a chance, which at that point would have been for a third goal. So the second goal, as we mentioned earlier, came from Lee Burge just kicking it very high into the wind, and it's bounced over everyone. And Brighton Bakari was following that up. It's a very good finish to make it 2. And the third, which really should have been a third for Bakayoko, I'm not really sure why it wasn't given. Kelly took the free kick, and it was sort of parried away. And then Bakayoko on the follow-up put it in the back of the net. I'm not really sure why it wasn't given. I read Laurie's match report yesterday. He said it was for offside. I remember looking straight after that goal because there wasn't massive celebrations from the players, so I was sort of unsure whether it had actually been given. The linesman didn't have his flag up, So I don't know whether it was a push or not. It was just generally a bewildering decision. And then another odd decision from the referee, although again, I think at the time, I thought you got it right, was when Lee Tomlin just sent a high kick towards Luke Thomas. It looked relatively innocuous, slightly reckless, but it didn't seem like a high-profile enough incident for it to be a penalty. It wasn't particularly a notable foul, but then led to a injury break of about 10 or 12 minutes where they had to get the stretcher on to take Luke Thomas off, and then you see the photo of it that came out on Twitter the following day, and it was very nasty, right on the cheek, very close to the eye. And of course, that incident happened right in front of the away end, and the referee, for about 5 or 10 minutes, had to stand by the stretcher, just taking the full invective from the away fans there. But yeah, I understand why it wasn't given, but I think looking back on it, the referee probably would have given a penalty in that situation. And from then on, we were very comfortable seeing that game out. And then in the 8th minute of stoppage time, sort of a unavoidable goal. Perhaps Tom Bayes just overran the clearance from a corner, and their midfielder, Louis Reed, takes a pot shot with his first touch, takes a deflection, and goes past Lee Birch, who otherwise had been absolutely immaculate that day. But still, it didn't really seem like the tide was going to turn at that point, and it was a game that I'd probably describe in the end, despite quite a difficult first half, it was kind of a thrashing without the scoreline reflecting that.
Anybody got any questions for Dom about the rest of the Peterborough game?
How good was Kelly? Oh, and how did Dominic Hyam perform? 'Cause obviously, we were all slightly concerned about his trip to the hospital, but that's quite a remarkable turnaround. I think we were all expecting to be out for a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, on Hyam, it's completely surprising when you hear the sound of the accident. It was 100 miles per hour collision. How he can get out of that, not only be back physically, but to be sort of mentally ready to play football within just over a week of that is absolutely incredible. And he was sort of your typical Dominic Hyam performance, dealt very well. Peterborough have a very very tough front two to play against, with Ivan Toney, who's just very big, bustling centre forward. Didn't have a great game, actually, Toney. There's like 3 or 4 touches he took, which were about 10 or 15 yards. Just wasn't quite his day, but he's still a very tough opponent to deal with. And both him and Willis kept him very quiet. Willis, I'd say, had the better game of the two centre-backs. His covering pace is absolutely vital, especially when you're coming up against a technical opposition like that, who can get in behind. Having someone who can recover like that is very important. And Liam Kelly, again, is just a typical Liam Kelly performance that we've grown used to over these past few months, winning a lot of challenges in front of the penalty area, and then just setting the platform for the rest of the team to play off. He's a very sort of important cog in the side at the moment, and is allowing that front four plus Bayliss to really do what they do best.
Just quickly on Willis's recovery paces, there was one moment in the second half, reasonably late in the game, where Willis stops a counter-attack by just being lightning. And the moments like that where you think, because we've said before about actually, we can't quite get why people talk about him as being like the best centre-back in League One. Not to say that he's not a good centre-back, but the level at which he's talked about. There's occasional things like that where you think, I can see why people would look at him and think, yeah, I'd take you at a higher level, because it was silly how dangerous it was for them and how quickly he snuffed it out by being really fast. You just thought, okay. And as well as he just sort of nipped the ball away and then carried it forward, and you thought, yeah, that was really, really top class. I thought him and Hyam were really, really good from what I saw. Anything else? We said we'd talk about sort of Vena Bakari a bit more. At what point do we very specifically say that it doesn't matter what the fuck you do if you score a load of goals?
I reckon that's important.
Yeah.
I think we've been guilty of kind of turning him into a bit of a caricature, and this idea that he, like when we focus on the time where he's slow on the ball or he slows the play down, we've kind of turned that into that sort of all-encompassing game. It's not his game, and I think we've been dismissive of the times where he does actually drive us on, and he does move the ball quickly, and he does drop his shoulder and nudge it past the player, and I think he showed that a lot the other day, and he's been showing it more and more, and it's crucial. And maybe we just say, okay, that's who he is. Maybe sometimes he slows it down. Maybe sometimes he drifts past player, and maybe actually the fact that he is so unpredictable, you're never too sure whether he's going to slow it down and go forward in sort of fast motion, is actually what makes him such a threat for us.
The other thing is that when you start talking about him, and this is probably a symptom of our kind of immediate judgment culture, is that there's a bit of it where you kind of go, you know, that goal he scored was brilliant, but there's all this other stuff. And then weeks go by, and that he's scoring a goal every other game where he's kind of either running from really deep and either getting on the end of something on the edge of the box and like either beating someone or fire it. Like 3 of his goals now have been goals that you really wouldn't expect to see anybody score in League One. That, you know, habitually. And as soon as you start building up a profile of that, which he might have done his last one, but you don't get the impression that he has, is then you kind of have to go, yeah, there is all that stuff, but actually that wasn't a one-off goal. He's now doing that every other game.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's a, you know, you could have a 20-goal-a-season striker where you'd be like, oh, they're amazing. And there is a whole different kettle of fish of a player who is literally creating goals from fucking nothing. Like he's just they're just happening because he is very, very good at football.
But his goals per minutes, his minutes per goal isn't as good as Bakayoko's.
Wow, but then whose is?
You know, Bakayoko's goal every 165 minutes, 6 goals, 3 assists for Bakayoko, which is, you know, he's played nearly 1,000 minutes less than Connor Chaplin, and he's 1 goal behind him and got the same amount of assists.
We've all got the BBC website open, Paul.
I'd like to think you have.
That's why I know that, and quickly scans to it. I think it's 198 minutes for Ena Bakari. 198 minutes per goal for Ena Bakari.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't fuck with that, can you? That's good.
No, that's basically those two. It's Bakayoko had 3 from the start of the season, so he's got 3 in his last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah. 2 in his last 2.
Yeah, and Bryce obviously got his 4 in, you know, not many games at all. 6, 7?
Yeah.
So, you know...
it goes back to this thing that we talked about with Huula and Thomas last week about what context looks like. Is actually the number of players now starting to chip in with goals means that you lighten the load on having a player that scored 20 goals up front or whatever. Actually, if Ena Bakari is scoring every other game, or like close to that, Bakayoko is scoring better than every other game. Huula has stepped up in terms of his goal scoring rate. Actually, all of a sudden, it's very comfortable, isn't it? So I saw earlier that we're the second top scorers in the last 8 games, which I know is a very specific stat that would normally be produced by you, Paul, to prove something that you've tried.
But it's also a case of, as I said earlier, it's like the defense. As I said on the last couple of pods, the defensive unit is better. When the games are close, we're not conceding goals. And by the sounds of it, the Peterborough game had quite a lot similar to the Fleetwood game where Peterborough were on top for a large period, but we kept ourselves in it. And then when you go 1-0 up, we're a very difficult team to beat. We don't lose often from being 1-0 in front. Conversely, we don't often come back. What was the stat, Dom? We haven't come back at home to win since like April 2016 or something.
Yeah, it's coming up nearly 3 years.
So I mean, that's the thing. We need to keep this up. We've got the great opportunity against Oxford, who are a team. You know, there are teams at the bottom of the table who seem to be trying to put up a fight to get out of it. Oxford don't seem to be one of those teams. With Doncaster's game against Luton,
yeah,
you know, this time next week we could be in the playoffs, and then all bets are off, really, aren't they?
Well, should we move on seamlessly to that Oxford game that Dominic's here to preview for us? What do you make of them this season, Dom?
Well, on paper, probably one of the better squads in the division. And then I suppose sort of the teams down there, possibly the most talented squad individually, possibly except Bradford, who's it's just been a shambles of a season for Oxford. It's just been quite odd just how they've just never been able to build any momentum at all this season, despite the talent they have on the squad, despite having in Carl Robinson, the manager who generally had teams up near the playoffs in this division. And strangely, despite them being in the bottom, there just doesn't appear to be a lot of pressure on Robinson or even the team to get out of this mess. They're in quite a weird ownership situation where they're owned by a Thai, I believe, businessman who calls himself Tiger, who used to own Reading. There appears to be cash flow issues with getting money from his bank accounts abroad into the club. They also managed to bring in Eric Thohier, who used to own Inter into sort of the investment group. But still, there appear to be one or two financial issues that they're dealing with, and that's perhaps why there hasn't been the pressure on Carl Robinson to lift them. And they're just a part of now that absolute melee near the bottom of the division.
Were they issued with a winding up order in the middle of February?
Yeah, they've had a few. Part of it is because their stadium, the Kassam Stadium, which was built by their former owners, they're demanding rent payments. Is relatively similar to the Rico situation here, although sort of less of a there's sort of fewer parties involved, but they are very stubborn, the Kassam family, and that's been much to the chagrin of Oxford. It's a three-sided ground, and successive regimes have tried to get that sorted out, and Kassams are having none of it, and it seems to contribute to quite an odd atmosphere at home games.
You mentioned Carl Robinson before. Can we expect, after we win on Saturday, that he will carp on about the fact that the reason that they lost is because they tried to play football in the right way?
Possibly. I wonder whether he's sort of getting a bit fed up with the situation as it is, although I feel he's sort of kind of backed into a corner now with Oxford after having done okay but not outstanding at Charlton and having let things sort of peter out at MK Dons. His managerial career is in quite a difficult place at the moment. So a big issue for them this season has been away form. They've won just one away game this season, but oddly have also lost fewer away games than ourselves. So it's quite odd. The squad is just woefully imbalanced. They've got two centre backs, one right back, one left back. They play midfielders at full back. They don't really have a focal point in attack. And despite all the amazing sort of attacking midfield and wide talent in James Henry, Marcus Brown, Gavin White, Jordan Graham, who is another you put in the category of players from Cov who haven't played for Cov. It's just very odd how the squad's been put together, despite there being a lot of talent. It just feels like Robinson wanted to put together a squad of sort of individual players he liked, and hasn't really spent much time thinking about how that makes a team. Even though he has a very sort of specific setup of generally like to stick to a 4-2-3 formation and play out from the back, but it's just very odd how he's managed the squad this season.
And anyone that you've not already mentioned that we should look out for?
So I think the main threats are going to be those attacking midfielders and wingers, just very good individual players, decent amount of pace in the side. And it's just whether the team is going to be set out to bring the best out of that system. They also have in goal in Simon Eastwood, a player who I reckon is probably one of the best goalkeepers in the division. Curtis Nelson at centre back, again another who's among the best in his position. in this division, although he hasn't been quite at his best this season, and that's been sort of part of Oxford's struggles, although they absolutely have no one else they can play instead of him.
Lovely stuff. I'm not going to ask you for anything even resembling a prediction this week because I'm so terrified that you might say that we'll win. So I think we'll leave that there if that's all right. Question for all of you. Do you want to add anything to the very succinct roundup of 2 victories before we move on to questions from Twitter?
Questions, please.
Questions, please. Now, do you know what? Now, I'm always the first one to criticise the terrible, unreadable questions from the listeners. But this week's a really fantastic effort. And
You're a charmer, aren't you?
And I don't know whether it's because usually, Paul, you are the person that asks the questions, and I don't know whether I've got a better class of fan that follows the podcast Twitter account rather than you. Do you want to speculate on that, Paul?
I refuse to comment.
Right, okay. Ed Wilson asks, can each member of the panel...
Well, clearly you don't have a high quality of people following you, then, do you?
Can each member of the panel nominate a favourite motorway and give detailed reasons for their choice? Neil, I'm just going to ask you to do that one.
I sense that's a reference to something, but I can't quite work out what. Something I've said, maybe?
I think it was, I got confused about whether you'd attended, when it was that you were stuck on the motorway earlier, didn't I? And I think he's probably jumped on that like the hilarious rascal that he thinks he is.
Big lols.
Big lols, thanks Ed. Soft Sell at Hate Tim Fisher on Twitter asks us who the boo boy is this week. Paul, that feels like it's a question for you.
I think one of the advantages of winning games is you tend not to focus on players' inabilities to do stuff. So we'll go with we have no boo boy until the next time we lose, and then we're going to hammer someone.
Absolutely, we will arbitrarily.
Once we've built up this goodwill, we're going to have to unleash it on some poor bastard. But obviously, it won't be any of our favourites. It'll be someone we don't really like. Anyway.
I feel like Chaplin is the boo boy this week. I feel like he's getting a bit of a harsh rap, even though he's injured. Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, by reference to
by pointing out the fact that we're playing better and it's not just us, and I'd like to put this out there. It's not just Coventry City who are playing far better. They're now not burdened with Connor Chaplin. Have you noticed the person who had to play alongside him for most of the season has left him behind and now rattled goals like nothing else at Bristol Rovers?
Oh, the one who was playing alongside him when we won 5 in a row. Yeah, I remember that. That was.
But he wasn't scoring, though, was he? JCH wasn't scoring.
We're winning. I thought that's the whole thing of this podcast is as long as we're winning, it doesn't matter.
Now JCH has got 8 in 3 or something.
I don't think it's quite Dion Dublin's first 3 games at Villa, but it's probably not far off. Disco Beetle asks, who would you like in the playoff final and how many will the Big Back get in the Championship next year? Neil, how many do you think he's going to score?
The Big Back? He won't be with us next year. And I'd like Sunderland in the playoff final, please.
Oh my God. That would be amazing. Dom, should Bakayoko be allowed to come out at half-time and join his fellow Coventry City legends on the pitch?
Definitely. Sort of, he's done enough to stand by, some of the top players from Coventry City's history in terms of achievement and, skill.
Lots of questions this week about Bakayoko, probably because he's such a massive legend. That was from Joey C, by the way, a different one than I. And then Tom Furnival Adams asks, obviously we'll build a team around Bakayoko next season, but who else would you retain for the Championship? Paul, players that you would think in this current team would be good enough to play in the Championship when we're there next season?
Sterling.
Dujon Sterling.
Yep. Bayliss. Kelly. I really do think he could probably make the step. Whether or not he'd be your first choice, but I think he'd be a squad player. Tawula, maybe. I don't know. It's really. I saw someone earlier go, well, I don't want us to get promoted because we're not ready. And you're like, well,
I can't stand that.
Yeah, fuck that. Let's get promoted, and then, ideally, probably few of them. But at the end of the day, if we get promoted, they're going to have to cope with it, and we can't change 11 players. So I think it's always a case of what aspirations are you when you get promoted? If it's just to survive, you'd hope that we've got at least 7 or 8 players in the squad who could be in a squad or team that could survive, and you hope to add quality around it, don't you?
Plus, Coventry City in the Championship with the Rico Arena potentially, and this year we spent £1 million on a player. Next year we'd have more money. It's a proposition, isn't it? Surely for people to want to come and play for us.
Yeah, I think it's nonsense to say. I don't even know what "we're not ready" means. Like, if you end up getting promoted, then you are ready. Like, it's it's not. That's how it works, as far as I'm concerned. You kind of, all that could happen is we could go down the following season as bottom of the Championship. That's literally the worst. Why would you not just say? I don't see how it would be better to wait. We'd have less money. We'd sign worse players. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Ian Heron asks, please can you pick on some other players so that they can turn into Worldies too? Fair shout. Joseph asks, is Tony Andrew a suitable replacement for Bright Bakari next season? I do feel like some of these aren't entirely seriously asked, do you? Cameron Cairns asks, provided we get promoted to the Championship and there's a possibility of signing David Myler permanently, would you sign him if you were in Mark Robbins' position, Dom?
Probably not, based on what we've seen from Nesper. I suppose there is probably a gap in the side for an experienced midfielder in the wake of losing Dor. I know Kelly stepped up, but when it comes down to summer, whatever division we're in, there's going to be kind of a deficit of experience aside from Kelly. So I think we're going to probably have to bring in an experienced head or two this summer, whether that's in keeping with the model we seem to be going for, where we're signing younger players. I suppose that could be, next season could probably be the test of this new direction we're going, where we're seemingly targeting younger players who we're hoping to develop. But I always think it's important to have sort of at least 1 or 2 experienced heads around who can sort of lift players when things aren't going well. I mean, we've had a couple of bad runs this season, and I think those are the moments when you need your experienced players just to calm everyone down, just to get everyone sort of believing what we're doing. From what I understand, David Meyer has been an excellent presence off the pitch for the players, but in terms of what he's done on the pitch thus far, I mean, he's clearly not fit enough, so he hasn't been able to sort of represent his best football. But I wouldn't be pursuing him permanently.
Oh, yeah, and the thing there, like you say, is I gather he's still not fit, is he? But then I guess I can hear Paul's voice asking already, why would you sign a player that's not fit? In terms of experience, I like that lad at Notts County that they've got in midfield. That's who I would go for.
Apparently the Notts County fans aren't as keen on him as you are.
What?
Apparently they've worked out he can't take corners.
And that is exactly what I bring him in to do.
I don't see what Coventry fans saw in him. He just runs around kicking people and complaining at the ref. You'd be like, yes.
Yeah. Apparently they're getting a little bit sick of his songs because he's playing badly.
How are they getting on, Paul? I haven't looked.
They're not. I think he came in. They did all right stuff. I think that sort of whatever happened. I think the whole football club is a bit of a basket case.
Mm.
And I think almost what they were hoping for with Doyle, they were never going to get, because he needs the players around him, doesn't he? I mean, yeah. He's fine at doing what he does, but if you've got people alongside him who aren't very good, he doesn't help. He's not, he's not going to make a bad team good, is he? He makes good players probably, or average players slightly better. But I think that hasn't quite worked. In the whole Mailer thing, in January, maybe, I mean, in the summer, if we do get promoted, you sign him because you know what you're getting out of him. I don't think he's particularly a bad player. Just, you watch him at the moment, and against Fleetwood, he just looked like he wasn't fully engaged at times, but I think that's just because he's not quite sure how fit he is. The fact he's in the Republic of Ireland squad, it just seems really odd to me, because I can't imagine they're going to play him. You would have thought there'd be someone younger who'd be more they'd be more interested to see than a player who's clearly not fit. And not even not fit. Let's face it, the reason he's not in the team is because we've got better players than him at the moment who are playing really well. You would have thought, isn't Liam Kelly Irish?
Scottish.
Is he Scottish?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's from Milton Keynes,
I know he's English.
But, yeah.
I know he's English, but which one of the
he's got a cap.
Pretend he's from? Oh, yeah, he's got a Scottish cap.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Has he?
A long time ago, when he was at Kilmarnock and doing pretty well there, and then he got moved to Bristol City, which didn't go so well.
I thought he literally didn't realise he had a career before Leyton Orient. So there you go.
Right, I love this question, and let's try not to analyse it too forensically. Callan on Twitter asks, it's Friday night down at the Power League. You've got the entire City squad to choose from. Who do you pick as your five-a-side teammates? So that means that you're in the team. You've got Burge. I'm going to enforce that Burge is your pick as goalkeeper, or you can have Corey Adai.
Corey Adai just lying flat.
Yes,
come on.
Okay. So you can have Burge or Corey Adai, and you've got to pick 3 others. Neil, who are you going for?
The Dominator, he'll be in there.
Okay.
Chaplin, he's the five-a-side player. I'm sure he's good on the small pitch. Thomas Bayliss. And is that 4? And one more.
No, you've got that's 3 there, because then you've got Burge or Adai in goal, and you to finish off.
Me as well,
5.
obviously me.
Dom?
So my main inspiration for this is, who do I think would be less likely to shout at me for being rubbish? So Burge in goal.
Yes.
We can sort of share stories. Bayliss, he seems like a nice guy. Trying to think. I don't want to say too many players in our squad seem particularly mean, but I think quite a lot of them would be not happy that I'm nowhere near as good at football as them. So maybe Shipley. Not that I'm saying he's a bad player, but he could sort of help me with some running.
Help you with some running.
He's going to carry you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Basically, you've got Shipley.
Oh, he's gone.
Shipley, take me over there. Take me 20 foot that way.
Paul, who are you going for?
I restarted playing five-a-side football quite recently, and what I found is I don't want anyone else to be in my sort of defensive area, because that's where I stand, because I can't move much. So I don't want a defender, apart from maybe Sterling, because let's face it, he's class. So, and he's box to box, which is what you always need on five-a-side. You need someone who can basically score with every single touch, which is Hawula. Oh, Bakayoko, going with Hawula. And then, because let's face it, this is a sort of dream team, it's never going to happen. Obviously, I'm going to pick Tom Bayliss, because Tom Bayliss is by far our best player, and just passing the ball to Tom Bayliss and then him giving me the ball back would be brilliant.
Do you know what's really flying under the radar just recently? You really love Hawula, don't you?
I find him a peculiar footballer, but I think in that sort of thing we talk about a fair bit, and it's one of Neil's things where sometimes for some reason it just works. In that, playing James Milner at left back worked, and having John O'Shea play every single position won him Champions League medals, even though he was technically John O'Shea. Hawula just works. I don't know how. I don't really care how. He just works, and it's not. I completely like listening back to the pod the other week where me and Neil were discussing Hawula. I completely agree with everything he says about the fact that he's an odd player. He flows in and out of the game. He technically doesn't exist for 15 minutes at a time, but he's just effective, and that's almost. I accept, especially in the lower leagues, that if you're effective and you actually produce the goods, which he does score goals, he does create goals, he's a menace, even though for 20 minutes he's not involved, I can accept that at this level, because that wins you games, and that's what he does. He's just an odd player, and I also like the fact he doesn't seem to have much of an ego. He's not he just gets on with it. I've never seen him sort of moan or bitch or whinge, or he just gets on with it, and I really like that in the player who just he's just there, and he's you can see he really wants to be a professional footballer, and he's really engaged in what he's doing, and all power to him, because we've seen players who've got more ability than him who don't put in don't have the right attitude. He just seems to have the right attitude.
I think you want to be his boyfriend. I also think that I was hoping and praying that we were about to hear the most Paul Knowles thing that ever Paul Knowles. I thought you were going to say that you listened back to the podcast and you had to agree with everything that you'd said about it.
Well, obviously I agree with everything I say. Part of it.
I love the idea of you in your car driving to work, listening to your own podcast and nodding along going, now that's what I'm talking about.
Well, what really is, I listened to the week that I wasn't on and listened to you lot slagging Bakayoko off. And it's just like, that's not right, because he demands 20 goals.
For the sake of completion, I would go for Willis and Bayliss, absolutely, who would be absolutely amazing at five-a-side, wouldn't they? They just would completely boss it. And then really what you need is a goal scorer, but in lieu of really having one in the squad, I would probably give it to Hawula above Bakayoko. I would obviously be at the back with Jordan Willis bossing things as usual. And just as an extra thing on here, and this is probably unnecessarily harsh, I'll tell you who wouldn't get anywhere near the team: Luke Thomas. What you really need is a bit of either clinicalness or a bit of kind of not ball hogginess, and I bet he'd be an absolute fucking nightmare to play five-a-side with, wouldn't he?
I think we were a bit. I don't think we probably gave as much praise as he deserves. That pass for Bakayoko's goal is. If that had been someone else, I think we'd been raving. If that had been Bayes, for instance, I think we'd have spent 5 minutes talking about it. It's a fantastic, absolutely fantastic pass.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not having to go at Luke Thomas more generally.
Oh, no.
But you'd have to accept that for five-a-side, you'd be like, I'm open. I'm open. No, you're not, again. No, you're going to take another shot that you don't score. Yeah. No, is that what you're doing here? Right, okay. I think we've probably just about run out of time. Yeah, I think actually there's a lot more questions here, but we've pretty much done for time. So I think we'll wrap things up unless anyone... CJ asked me to push the coach trip on Thursday, which actually I think is a really nice idea again. Fair play to the Sky Blue Trust, who I think are doing a lot of good stuff at the moment. So he has got... Let me find the details of it. So it's on Thursday, and I'll find on his Twitter page... So on Thursday from 8:30 a.m, there's a coach that is open to everybody and they are going to the council house, then they're meeting at Cov Baths, going to Wasps, and then they're going to Sisu to drop off a sort of signed letter petition, sort of en masse, to show all of the sides what the club means to the community. I just thought it was a really nice kind of visual idea. So yeah, if you want to get in touch, it's at CJ_CovBlaze. He will be able to give you the details on Twitter, or I should imagine it's on the Sky Blue Trust website, which if you Google Sky Blue Trust, I'm sure you'll find. In fact, it's skybluetrust.co.uk. Anyone, any more before we wrap up?
No.
That sounds like a no. Okay, right. So if you want to get in touch with us, at Neil Lamptey Show or neellampteyshow.co.uk or neellampteyshow@gmail.com. Dom, thanks for joining us for the whole thing. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, yeah, it's been good.
Paul, less of a pleasure, but still quite a pleasure.
Cheers.
Neil, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.